Hi, welcome to Conflict Story, where we bring you the best and most fascinating stories just for you. Let's dive right into one of those stories. It begins like this.
I never thought I'd be in a battle with a homeowner association, and especially since I didn't even belong to one. But life has a strange way of dropping you into unexpected fights. This is the story of how I uncovered a homeowner association illegally tapping into my electricity at my mountain cabin and the whirlwind of events that followed as I fought back. My name is Ethan, and I've owned a secluded cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia for about 12 years. It's a modest two-bedroom retreat, a haven my wife Claire and I escaped to when the stress of city life becomes too much. Surrounded by 8 acres of dense forest, the cabin feels like a world away from the chaos of modern life. The closest neighbor is nearly a mile away, or so I thought, until this saga began. One crisp Friday evening in late September, Claire and I arrived at the cabin for a much-needed weekend getaway. As we pulled into the winding dirt driveway, something unusual caught my eye. Tire tracks veered off into the trees near the edge of our property, an area that should have been untouched. "That's strange," I said, pointing them out to Claire. She leaned forward to get a better look, her brows furrowing. "Maybe someone got lost. It's easy to take a wrong turn out here." "Maybe," I muttered, though unease had already settled in my gut. I decided to investigate the next morning. The following day, with the crisp mountain air invigorating me, I grabbed a thermos of coffee and followed the tracks into the woods. The trail was narrow but distinct, leading deeper into the property. Eventually, I pushed through a cluster of underbrush and stumbled into a small clearing where an unfamiliar structure stood. It was a freshly built utility shed, small but sturdy, its exterior blending poorly with the natural surroundings. A thick, black cable extended from the shed, running in the direction of my cabin. My heart raced as I examined the setup. Peering through a tiny window, I spotted breaker boxes and a jumble of electrical equipment. To my horror, the cable was directly connected to my cabin's power line. "What the hell?" I muttered, anger bubbling up as I realized someone had been stealing my electricity. I stormed back to the cabin, practically kicking the door open. "Claire, you're not going to believe this!" She looked up from her book, startled. "What happened?" "Someone's built a shed on our property and tapped into our power line," I explained, pacing the room. Her eyes widened. "That's crazy. Who would even do that?" "I have no idea, but I'm going to find out." My first call was to the local sheriff's department. They agreed to send a deputy to investigate, but I didn't feel like waiting around. Determined to uncover more, I hiked along the property line and made a startling discovery. Just beyond the boundary, hidden behind a row of tall pines, was a gated community I'd never noticed before. The sign at the entrance read, "Evergreen Heights, Private Property." A cluster of high-end homes with manicured lawns and pristine sidewalks lay beyond the gate. I couldn't believe this had sprung up without me noticing. When I returned, the sheriff's deputy was examining the shed. After hearing my account, he confirmed that the setup was illegal and assured me they'd launch an investigation. Shortly after, a technician from the electric company arrived to safely disconnect the unauthorized connection. "Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing," the technician remarked. "This isn't amateur work." The next day, Claire and I decided to confront the community's homeowner association directly. At the gated entrance to Evergreen Heights, a security guard stopped us. After explaining the situation, he reluctantly called the homeowner association president, a man named Andrew Sinclair. Within minutes, Sinclair arrived in a sleek luxury sedan. Polished and charming, he greeted us with an insincere smile. After I outlined the problem, Sinclair feigned surprise. "Oh dear, this must be some kind of misunderstanding. Why don't we discuss this in my office?" We followed him into a tastefully decorated clubhouse, where he led us to a spacious office. Sinclair listened intently as I laid out the facts, only to offer a smug rebuttal. "It's possible there was a mix-up with the contractor," he said, leaning back in his chair. "But I'm sure we can come to an arrangement. Perhaps we could negotiate a rental agreement for the use of your land." His dismissive tone infuriated me. "A rental agreement? You've been stealing my electricity for months, and now you want to play nice? That shed needs to be removed immediately, and I expect full reimbursement for the power you've stolen." Sinclair's affable demeanor vanished. His expression hardened, and his voice dropped to a menacing tone. "Listen, Mr. Tanner, Evergreen Heights is a respected community with significant influence in this county. It would be in your best interest to cooperate. Are you threatening me? I demanded, standing abruptly. Because that's not going to work. We'll see you in court. Claire and I left, fuming but resolute. That night, we contacted a prominent utilities lawyer and began preparing for a legal battle. The homeowner association countered aggressively, claiming they had an easement allowing access to my property, a blatant lie easily disproved by my property records. As tensions escalated, anonymous threats began pouring in. Phone calls, letters, even a shadowy figure lingering near the cabin one night. We installed security cameras and kept the sheriff informed, but the intimidation tactics only strengthened our resolve. Weeks later, a breakthrough came when our lawyer tracked down a contractor who had worked on the illegal setup. Under threat of legal action, he confessed that Sinclair had personally hired him, fully aware of the illegality. Armed with this testimony, we filed a lawsuit against Evergreen Heights Homeowner Association, accusing them of theft, trespassing, and harassment. The legal battle dragged on for months, each side trading blows in court. Finally, as the trial began, Sinclair's arrogance became his undoing. Under pressure from our lawyer, he let slip a damning admission. Yes, we used their power. We needed it to maintain our community's amenities. What difference does it make? The courtroom erupted. The judge wasted no time delivering a verdict in our favor, ordering the homeowner association to pay $75,000 in damages and hold Sinclair accountable for his actions. It was a vindication we desperately needed. As we walked out of the courthouse, the crisp mountain air felt sweeter than ever. But the fight wasn't over yet. The fallout from the trial was swift and dramatic. Andrew Sinclair resigned as president of the Evergreen Heights Homeowner Association within days, his reputation in shambles. Local news outlets picked up the story, painting Sinclair and the Homeowner Association as emblematic of unchecked greed. Meanwhile, Claire and I used the settlement money to install a state-of-the-art security system at the cabin. Cameras now covered every angle of our property, ensuring no one could trespass unnoticed again. But even with the court victory, the tension lingered. Not everyone in Evergreen Heights was ready to let the matter drop. Anonymous letters filled with veiled threats continued to arrive, though they were now more desperate than intimidating. One note read, "You've ruined a good thing for everyone here. Don't think you're safe just because you won in court." We turned over each letter to the sheriff's office, but the investigation went nowhere. The threats seemed more like bluster than genuine danger, but they kept us on edge. We'd already come too far to back down now. As weeks turned into months, the animosity from the homeowner association began to morph into a coordinated campaign of harassment. Contractors hired by Evergreen Heights began parking their trucks on the edge of our property, engines idling for hours. Strange cars would drive past our cabin late at night, their headlights briefly illuminating our windows before disappearing into the dark. The message was clear. They wanted us gone. One evening, as I was reviewing documents from the trial, Claire called me to the front porch. "Ethan, you need to see this," she said, her voice tense. I stepped outside and followed her gaze to the edge of our property. A group of men stood there just beyond the tree line. They were dressed in construction gear, holding clipboards and pointing toward the cabin. When they noticed us watching, they lingered for a moment before walking away without a word. The next morning, I drove into town to confront the Homeowner Association's new president, a woman named Linda Hayes. Linda had been appointed after Sinclair's resignation, and I hoped she might be more reasonable. Her office was inside the same ornate clubhouse where we'd met Sinclair months earlier. But instead of the smooth charm Sinclair had exuded, Linda's demeanor was cold and defensive. "We're not responsible for the actions of individual residents," she said curtly when I explained the harassment. "If you have evidence, take it to the authorities. Otherwise, there's nothing I can do." "Your contractors are trespassing," I said firmly. "They've been on our property without permission, and we have the footage to prove it." Linda's eyes narrowed. "I'll look into it," she replied, her tone making it clear she wouldn't. Frustrated, I left the office, vowing not to let them intimidate us any further. That night, I reviewed the security footage and discovered something chilling. A group of men had entered our property under the cover of darkness and tampered with the utility box near the cabin. Though they wore masks to hide their faces, their movements were deliberate and confident. They'd clearly done this before. I immediately called the sheriff and handed over the footage, demanding action. The next day, deputies arrived to inspect the tampered box. "They were trying to disable your power," one of them explained. "Looks like they wanted to scare you into leaving." The harassment escalated further. One morning, we woke to find a large spray-painted message on the side of the cabin. Go home. It took hours to scrub off, but the psychological toll was worse than the physical damage. Claire and I began questioning whether this fight was worth it. The cabin, once a symbol of peace and refuge, now felt like a battleground. We can't let them win, Claire said one evening, as we sat by the fireplace, the warmth doing little to dispel the tension in the air. If we back down now, they'll just do this to someone else. She was right. This wasn't just about us anymore. It was about standing up to a system that thought it could bully and exploit anyone who didn't fall in line. Determined to fight back, we hired a private investigator to dig deeper into Evergreen Heights activities. What he uncovered was shocking. A web of corruption that extended far beyond our case. The homeowner association had been using underhanded tactics to seize land from other property owners, forging easement agreements and bribing local officials to look the other way. Sinclair's electricity theft was just the tip of the iceberg. Armed with this new information, we brought it to the attention of a local journalist who had covered our trial. She published a scathing expose revealing the homeowner association's corruption to the entire county. The fallout was immediate. Residents of Evergreen Heights, furious at being deceived, began turning on the homeowner association leadership. Linda Hayes resigned within days, and several board members were under investigation for fraud and embezzlement. But the battle wasn't over yet. Sinclair, now disgraced but still defiant, wasn't ready to let the matter drop. One evening, we received an unexpected knock at the door. When I opened it, there he stood, his once pristine appearance now disheveled. "We need to talk," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You've got 5 minutes, hon," I said, crossing my arms. Sinclair's expression was a mix of desperation and anger. "You don't understand what you've done," he began. "This isn't just about me. There are bigger players involved. If you keep pushing, you're going to regret it." I stared him down, unflinching. "Get off my property," I said evenly, "and don't come back." As he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this fight was far from over. But one thing was certain. Claire and I weren't going anywhere. The cabin was our home, and we'd defend it, no matter what it took. The night after Sinclair's unwelcome visit, the air around the cabin felt heavier. Claire and I double-checked every lock, every window, and the security system's feeds. Sinclair's cryptic warning replayed in my mind. There are bigger players involved. Who were these bigger players he was talking about, and how far were they willing to go? The following week brought more strange occurrences. Our mail began arriving late, with envelopes mysteriously torn open and resealed. A large tree near our driveway was felled overnight, blocking our way out until we could get someone to remove it. Even the animals in the area seemed agitated, their nocturnal cries adding an eerie soundtrack to our already tense nights. Determined to regain control, I reached out to our lawyer, Natalie Tran. Her firm specialized in property disputes and corruption cases, and so far she had been a steadfast ally. I shared Sinclair's visit and the increasingly bold harassment tactics. Natalie's response was firm and clear. "We need to escalate this. If they're doubling down, it's because they're scared of what you might uncover next." She wasn't wrong. The private investigator we'd hired had unearthed even more damning evidence. The homeowner association's network extended to local businesses, contractors, and even a county official who had been approving questionable permits for Evergreen Heights. These connections painted a picture of a corrupt empire built on exploitation and intimidation. With Natalie's guidance, we filed a new lawsuit, this time targeting not just the homeowner association, but also the involved businesses and officials. The case became a sensation, drawing attention from state regulators and investigative reporters. The pressure on Evergreen Heights was mounting, but with it came greater risks for us. One chilly October evening, Claire and I were startled awake by a loud crash. I grabbed the bat I kept under the bed and rushed downstairs. The living room window had been shattered, shards of glass glinting in the moonlight. Lying amidst the debris was a brick wrapped in paper. Unfolding it, I read the scrawled words. "Drop the case or else." Claire stood behind me, clutching her phone. "I'm calling the sheriff," she said, her voice trembling but resolute. The deputies arrived within half an hour, their flashing lights illuminating the otherwise silent forest. They took the brick and the note as evidence, but I could see the frustration on their faces. "It's hard to catch these guys without witnesses or clear footage," one of them admitted. "We have security cameras. Maybe they picked something up," I said, leading them to the system. Sure enough, the footage revealed a hooded figure approaching the cabin and hurling the brick through the window. Unfortunately, their face was obscured, but the direction they came from was clear, the same gated road leading to Evergreen Heights. The sheriff assured us they'd increase patrols in the area, but it felt like a hollow promise. Claire and I decided to take additional measures, installing reinforced glass and motion-detecting floodlights around the cabin. Still, the sense of unease lingered. A week later, the harassment reached a new level. While I was at work in the city, Claire called me in a panic. "Ethan, they've cut the power," she exclaimed. "The whole cabin's dark. I can hear something outside." My blood ran cold. "Stay inside, lock the doors. I'll call the sheriff and be there as soon as I can." As I sped up the mountain roads, adrenaline pumping, I called Natalie to update her. By the time I reached the cabin, deputies were already there, combing the area with flashlights. Claire was safe but shaken, and the security cameras had captured yet another masked figure tampering with the utility box. This time they had used bolt cutters to sever the connection entirely. "They're trying to scare you off," the lead deputy said, frustration evident in his tone. "But this level of sabotage is escalating. We'll need to involve state authorities." The next day we received a visit from a state investigator named Marcus Hill. A sharp-dressed man with a calm demeanor, Hill wasted no time getting to the heart of the matter. "I've been following the developments around Evergreen Heights," he said, spreading out a series of documents on our dining table. "Your case is exposing some very serious misconduct, and it's not just limited to your property. We suspect this network extends across multiple counties." Hill's arrival marked a turning point. With state resources involved, the pressure on the homeowner association and their allies intensified. Investigators raided the offices of Evergreen Heights, seizing records and devices. Several board members were subpoenaed, and whispers of plea deals began to circulate. The local media kept the story in the spotlight, ensuring that no one could sweep the scandal under the rug. But just as it seemed like justice was within reach, another twist threw us off balance. Late one night, as Claire and I were reviewing updates with Natalie over a video call, my phone buzzed with a notification from the security system. "Motion detected at the utility shed," the alert read. Pulling up the live feed, I saw two shadowy figures moving near the edge of the property. One of them carried what looked like a canister of gasoline. My heart pounded as I realized their intent. "They're trying to burn us out," I said, grabbing my jacket and rushing outside. Claire tried to stop me. "Ethan, wait for the deputies." But I couldn't stand by while someone destroyed everything we'd fought to protect. Armed with a flashlight and the bat, I sprinted towards the shed, shouting to scare them off. The figures froze before bolting into the woods, their canister clattering to the ground. As the deputies arrived minutes later, I handed over the evidence, my anger barely contained. "This ends now," I said to Hill, who had arrived shortly after. "I want every one of them held accountable." Hill nodded. "We're close, Ethan. Just hold on a little longer." The attempted arson proved to be the final nail in the homeowner association's coffin. The suspects were identified through fingerprints on the canister, and their confessions implicated key figures in the Evergreen Heights network. Arrests followed, and the corruption unraveled further, leading to a cascade of resignations and criminal charges. For the first time in months, Claire and I felt a sense of relief. The fight had been long and harrowing, but justice was finally being served. Yet we couldn't shake the feeling that the scars of this ordeal would linger. On us, on our cabin, and on the once idyllic community of Evergreen Heights. The final chapter of our fight against Evergreen Heights unfolded with both resolution and an unexpected twist. After months of legal battles, harassment, and escalating threats, the truth had finally come to light. The corruption within the homeowner association had been exposed. Arrests had been made, and the once pristine community of Evergreen Heights was now a shell of its former self. With the state's intervention, the remaining board members of the homeowner association were forced to step down. Their financial records revealed years of embezzlement and fraudulent activity, stretching far beyond the illegal utility tapping on our property. Several prominent figures faced prison sentences, including Andrew Sinclair, who was hit with multiple felony charges. His smug arrogance was gone when he was led away in handcuffs, replaced by the hollow look of a man who had lost everything. Claire and I took some solace in seeing justice served, but the aftermath left its own set of challenges. The cabin, once our sanctuary, still bore the scars of what we had endured. The shattered window had been repaired, the spray-painted messages scrubbed away, but the emotional weight lingered. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Claire turned to me. "Do you think we'll ever feel safe here again?" she asked softly. I considered her question carefully. "Maybe not in the same way we used to," I admitted. "But this place is ours. We fought for it, and we won. That has to mean something." Over the next few months, we focused on rebuilding, not just the cabin, but our sense of peace. We expanded the security system, added motion sensors to the property, and planted new trees to replace the ones felled during the homeowner association's harassment. The grove became a symbol of resilience, a reminder of the strength it took to stand up to such a powerful adversary. The community of Evergreen Heights, meanwhile, underwent a dramatic transformation. Without the homeowner association's oppressive rule, the neighborhood's remaining residents banded together to reshape their community. They dissolved the association entirely, opting instead for a more informal and cooperative approach to shared spaces. Many of them reached out to us with apologies, expressing their disgust at what had been done in their name. While we were initially wary, some of those relationships grew into genuine friendships. The legal settlement we received covered the damages and then some. With part of the money, we made a significant donation to a local organization that provided legal aid to victims of property disputes. We wanted others to have the resources to fight back against corruption, just as we had. The rest went into a fund for future improvements to the cabin and someday to share with our children and grandchildren. The media attention from our case sparked a broader conversation about the unchecked power of homeowner associations. New legislation was proposed at the state level, aiming to increase transparency and accountability for homeowner associations across Virginia. Knowing that our fight had contributed to meaningful change was a source of pride, even as we worked to move forward from the ordeal. One unexpected moment of closure came months after the trial, when we received a letter from Andrew Sinclair. Written from prison, it was a far cry from the arrogant bluster we'd come to associate with him. In it, he apologized for his actions, admitting that greed and ambition had blinded him to the harm he was causing. "Your fight against us forced me to confront the person I had become," he wrote. "I can't undo what I did, but I hope someday you can forgive me." Claire and I debated how to respond, if at all. In the end, we decided to let his words stand without reply. Forgiveness might come in time, but for now we were content knowing he was being held accountable. As the first anniversary of the trial approached, we hosted a small gathering at the cabin for our closest friends and some of the residents of Evergreen Heights who had supported us. It was a celebration of resilience, a way to reclaim the space as a place of joy and connection. Laughter filled the air, mingling with the rustle of the aspens we had planted. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I raised a glass to the group. "To standing up for what's right," I said, "and to the strength it takes to protect the things that matter most." The others raised their glasses in return, their faces glowing in the golden light. In that moment, surrounded by the people who had stood by us, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. The cabin remains our haven, and though it will always carry the memory of our fight, it also serves as a testament to the power of perseverance. The grove of trees we planted continues to grow, their leaves whispering in the mountain breeze. They stand as a living reminder that even in the face of adversity, growth and renewal are always possible. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow.